Okay, I figured this out. Took me a minute. I am here to do a Q&A about compost with Sandy Briggs, and I am just about to figure out how to invite her on to the show. So, new to Instagram Live and working this out in the moment. So let's see. It says, vulnerability here. Tab here, find requests to join your room. Let's see. I'm finding those, hopefully. I have no requests, so let's see if I can find Sandy. Let's see here. Sandy, where are you? Once I get Sandy on, we are going to have a chat about compost, why it's important, what it's all about, how to do it at home, and also other fun things about compost and having gratitude for the natural systems that support us this Thanksgiving season. But in the moment, I'm trying to understand how to invite my guest on. About compost, you can ask them in the chat. The person, Sandy Briggs, who will be on shortly, is an expert in compost in the city of Boulder and has worked really hard to create a thriving circular economy. So if you have any questions for Sandy when she comes on, I'll be able to have her answer those. In this moment, I'm still just working on getting her added to the Instagram Live. It's her first time doing this, and it's only my second, so we're working it out here. Let's see if we can find her. Let's try to invite her. I'm Paige. Jeff and Paige. We do kids, nature, and science-based music. And we have 7 albums available to stream of music all about nature and science for families and children. And we are super passionate about creating possibilities for living in circularity. And so that's why we're going to have this conversation with Sandy as soon as I can get her on here. I think that I have to go away from this and that we'll pause the video, but I promise I'll be back. Let's see, did this work? Okay, there we go. I found her. Earth Mom Forever. Sandy, I invited you to join. Let's see if it's working. Hey,
Oh,
we worked it out.
okay, hold on. Sorry.
Hey, don't worry about it. It's
Okay,
it's
so
such a low stress kind of interview situation. No problem.
got it. All right, can you hear me through these earbuds now
Yes,
then?
I can hear you.
Okay,
Hi.
cool.
I know.
Hello.
I feel like extremely nervous about like figuring out Instagram Live, but like it's fine. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, and
It's just
just I just don't do social media much, so I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just like clicked the link that Rudy sent me, but that just took me to my Instagram page. And anyhow,
yeah.
we don't have to waste any more time if you
We
don't
will
want
not.
to.
Welcome, Sandy. I'm so happy you're here. I'm going to start our chat with 3 deep breaths because that's how we always
Okay,
start the meeting. So
perfect.
if you're watching, you can join us in 3 deep conscious breaths, breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. I'm going to close my eyes. You can do whatever you want.
Okay, sounds fabulous.
We always start our meetings, Jeff and Paige, and then with any of our partners that we have meetings with 3 or 4 deep breaths to ground into presence and to land back in our bodies, especially if we've been arriving from somewhere or trying frantically to get on an Instagram Live. So letting all of that go, I'm so excited to welcome Sandy Briggs to have a conversation about compost. Sandy, would you introduce yourself and just tell us your job, what you love about compost, and maybe one fun fact about your Thanksgiving plans?
Sure. So awesome. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me, Paige. It's really great to be here. My name is Sandy Briggs, and my main job is as a Sustainability Senior Program Manager for the City of Boulder's Climate Initiatives Department. I am also the co-chair of the Colorado Composting Council, which is a committee of the Recycle Colorado organization in Colorado, but also the state chapter of the United States Composting Council. So composting is just something that's so cool for so many reasons. It's such a simple and complete solution to just so many challenges, and anyone can do it. It's not a new thing.
Yeah.
So I could go into a lot of detail about that, or we could just wait to see what comes up. But
well, that's a perfect start. And then how about one interesting or fun fact about where you're spending Thanksgiving?
I am spending Thanksgiving at home with my partner and our cat, doing Thanksgiving to go from a local restaurant. So
I love it.
yeah.
Are you gonna be able to use Deliver Zero by chance?
Unfortunately not. That's another big story that recently broke that we should talk about another time, probably.
Okay, great. Well, I love that you said composting's not new, because actually the way I was wanting to get into our conversation today is I was thinking about compost and how to have a bit of a different conversation about it. And also make sure we hit the basics. But my grandfather, so this would have been in the late 1950s, early 1960s, had a compost pile in southern Indiana. And my grandfather passed when I was 5, so I didn't get to hear this story from him, but my grandmother told me when I was in graduate school studying environmental education. I was talking about all the solutions and feeling pretty frustrated actually at that time that people weren't just like doing these things that seem really simple. And she was like, compost. She had a nice, sweet Southern accent. I think your grandfather did that. And she proceeded to tell me that my grandfather in the late 50s was considered a total weirdo in the neighborhood because he had a compost pile. And he would go around to the neighbors and say, like, oh, are you throwing those leaves away? I want them. And so going even as little back as that in our American culture history, it was already considered really weird to have a compost pile in the 1950s. Can you explore that from your lens of how did we get into this situation where it wasn't the norm to compost our food waste and our yard scraps?
Well, that's a really, really good and interesting question, Paige. I don't want to blame everything like on the Industrial Revolution and the change that we made from a more 50s kind of mentality where we reuse things and we were frugal and we grew a lot of our own food and ate a lot of our own food and didn't have the quote modern conveniences that we have today. I mean, ancient and indigenous societies have long understood the cycle of life and the inherent circularity about growing your own food and eating plants, and then making and using compost to keep the land healthy and productive to regenerate more food. And somewhere along the line of the early 19th century, I think 20th century, we lost to industry the natural processes that we've had for so long.
Yeah. Yeah, that's well explained. And I think, and then, being born into that new system of like, we don't compost, we don't have a use for these things, that it's become considered a waste. Now this moment that we're in is trying to change the way we think about it. So that's part of why it feels harder than just a system change, right? Is that it's
Right.
changing the way we think about it.
Right.
Will you speak to that? How do we need to think about waste differently?
Well, I mean, we in the biz actually really dislike the word waste because everything things could be designed to not be waste, to have a constant life or a new life or a different life as it finishes its first life. So, sorry, ask your question again. I went off on a tangent in my brain.
Yeah, no, that's great. What's your take on how to change the way we even think about waste in the first?
Well, I think thinking about it as not waste and as a resource instead, and making things that don't that aren't waste that you can use for one thing turn into another. For food scraps, for example, we'll eat most of the food that we have, but that what people are calling food waste is not necessarily waste. It's a resource that needs to be kind of cycled back into nature and into the ground in order to allow us to grow even more food and continue that cycle. So I think turning our waste mentality to a resource mentality is one of the major system changes that we need to kind of change back to, because that's where we were before.
Yeah. This morning, I'm traveling right now. I'm in Michigan at my in-laws, and we're getting ready for Thanksgiving. And part of why I want to have this chat now is because this is a time where there's going to be a lot of purchasing both food and other items and potential waste, but potentially not waste. And we're getting our sweet potatoes ready. You know, I baked them the night before, and I pulled out the bag, and there was a rotten sweet potato in there. And my son was with me, and he was like, we have to throw the whole thing away. And I was like, well, hang on. And just even in that moment, I had this minute to take a look, and okay, it's just this one sweet potato. That one, yes, it needs to go. They don't have compost here, but it would go in the compost at my house. And then I washed off the others, and he was like, I'm not eating that because it was touched by the mold. And I said, it's actually okay. And I had this moment to show him. But even the way that our food at the grocery store is packaged and shown and it looks so clean, it's changing the way we think about food. Have you noticed that too?
I have, and ridiculously, they're putting packaging on things that come with their own natural packaging, like bananas and skins and peels um, and yeah, and I don't. I'm loath to know exactly why that is. I'm sure there's tons of studies out there as to why we've changed into that and why that packaging is so important. But I think it's a fairly new phenomenon, and I also think it's how shall I say? I'm just trying to think of the very diplomatic way to say it. I think it's kind of ridiculous, and I think it's in response to fear in a lot of ways, and what people are worried about where their food came from and what it's touched and who's had it. And if we can kind of simplify the cycle and simplify the supply and what we buy, then and more locally. If you do it more locally too, then there's a lot less need for
Yeah.
packaging as well.
Well, and it does hit on a health and safety concern that many times is unfounded.
Right.
Like my son this morning, it was like, yeah, it hits our disgust, right, to see a rotting sweet potato, but then instead of throwing the whole bag out, which many people may have done, we took a minute longer with it, and we learned that it was okay and it was safe, and we smelled it and we touched it. So on that note of that, I'm traveling, and they don't have compost here in the city of Boulder and Boulder County. We're so lucky to have a municipal compost system. So how can we keep that thriving, Sandy? What's needed right now?
Well, what's needed is to take care with what you put in your compost. I mean, you said it. We are really, really fortunate in Boulder and in Boulder County to have a established and built-in way that we can all easily compost in Boulder County. And the idea is to only compost food and plants. And there's a lot of other things out there that are made that are compostable, but they're just the composting facility that the city of Boulder works with, and that Boulder County, and indeed a lot of the municipalities across the Front Range, just can't accept those materials right now. And we need to just kind of go back to basics and just compost what it is that the soil really needs and wants, which is organic discards, food scraps, plant trimmings, yard waste, leaves, branches. If it was really, alive at some point in our lifetime, and it's a food or a plant, then we want it in the compost bin, and you should be able to do that pretty much anywhere you go. So,
And so for people who need, I'm going to ask this question because I know it was coming up a lot for folks in the Boulder County area. But this throwaway mug is a compostable mug. Really, why can't I put it in? What's happening? Will you tell that story?
I can. So it's not that, I mean, so mugs, I haven't really come across a compostable mug myself, but
You know,
there's a lot of,
cup is what
yeah,
I meant.
yeah.
The like coffee
The,
cup.
the cup, yeah, so coffee cups are typically plastic lined and therefore cannot go into compost. Compostable cold cups and things like paper plates and things like, what's compostable silverware, compostable to-go containers and packaging, they're all things that are compostable. But what happens is a lot of times those materials hide things that aren't compostable, and they cause a lot of confusion. And there's a lot of different brands and different types of materials out there that might say that they're, biodegradable or natural or green or some labeling term that says that they're compostable, but they're really not.
Yeah.
And because of that, a lot of that waste and not compostable material was getting into the stream and getting to our compost facility out east of town, and causing them a lot of trouble and making compost that's not healthy and making compost that is full of plastic and glass and other contaminants that those materials were hiding. So
That was the part also that was interesting for me when I started to learn more about it, was that even if we had a whole load of compost that was made out of those compostable mugs and silverware, not, I'm saying
mhm,
cups and silverware,
mhm,
um, it wouldn't make good quality compost because it's not good quality materials. So when we're thinking about compost, we're thinking about a richness, and I like to think about soil and what I want to spread in my garden or have spread in a garden that's growing a tree near me, and that helped me think about it differently.
totally. And soil microscopy is so cool, and that's just basically the biology of soil. And as you mentioned, Paige, that those materials that are compostable may be compostable, but they don't create life. They don't put these little microbes and microorganisms into the mix that are basically the basis of the life in the soil that create, they break down organic materials and multiply and create that rich, healthy soil structure that you're talking about. And the compostable materials just don't do that. They can be useful in some ways by carrying, other types of food waste into the compost stream with them. But really, it's more of a way to manage waste than create healthy soil by being able to take compostable materials.
And I love how you just said that, because I feel like that's the crux of the circularity, is that we don't want to just manage waste, we want to create healthy soil. And so
Totally.
that's what our in Boulder County municipal compost is doing. So for people who might be tuning in who don't have municipal compost, they have some
Mm-hmm.
options of doing backyard
Mm-hmm.
compost. What other ideas do you have for folks that don't live in a place where they can compost municipally?
Well, it is tricky, and it might, if you don't have access to a yard where you can make your own compost in your backyard, as Paige mentioned, there are ways that you can still divert your own food waste from your kitchen, but it does maybe take a little bit more effort, and you may have to find some other place that you can take it. But there are ways to compost in, or not compost in your kitchen, but like dehydrator. There's what's called bokashi composting, which is basically a fermentation process. And that's a way to prevent your food scraps from going to the landfill, but then you actually need to end it, put that material that's made from this process into a compost pile eventually so it can finish. Um, it's tough to find ways if you don't have a backyard or a municipal system or a compost facility nearby, with what to do. But there are some actually municipalities that have what I like to call concierge or bucket collectors, that are people that are very passionate about composting and have started small businesses in their very local areas where they will actually go and pick up a bucket of compost from homes and take it to their own facility. There's community composting sites available. There are composting piles on community gardens. There's composting piles on farms in Boulder County. There are other places where you can take it if you don't have access to either a municipal collection or your own backyard pile.
And then what if what I was watching this, and I thought I want to encourage my city or county to compost. Do you know the story? I don't know if this is in your wheelhouse, but of how it happened in our city in Boulder, in the Boulder County area.
I know a little bit about that. I'll try to make the history short, I guess, but I think it was back in 2008-ish that the city of Boulder and one of the largest municipal private haulers in Boulder, Western Disposal, came together to pilot a program to do compost collection, curbside compost collection from single-family residences in Boulder. And that became pretty successful going forward. And several years later, City Council, I think, recognized the success of that program and decided that if this is going to work in Boulder like this, we really need to make this available to everyone. So they gave a mandate to those of us in what was then known, I think, the local Environmental Action Division Department, to create an ordinance that would actually make composting and recycling and trash all separated collections and make them universally available across Boulder, not just to single-family residences, but also multifamily complexes, to businesses, to public spaces, to special events. And therefore, what was called the Universal Zero Waste Ordinance was born and implemented throughout the end of the 2016 through like 2020 period. So that was it was a good success at single family residences. So it was made universal by this ordinance in the mid 2010s. So
Do you know if that was citizen driven or driven by the city? What role did citizens play in the change?
I don't know specifically, but I do know that we have a very engaged citizenry here in Boulder and that a lot of people are really interested in these things and want to see them happen in Boulder. So I am quite certain there was quite a lot of public comment made when this was proposed, and people came out. There was a lot of what people call, stakeholder groups where you get together with citizens and businesses and waste haulers and city council and city staff and and have these conversations about how this can be most effective. And that's typically how where a lot of outreach happens and citizens come forward to voice what it is that they want to see.
Yeah, and I think I would close this part of our conversation thread on noting that it really does make a difference to speak up. And, I know that's not always how we feel. And I think part of it is trusting that it makes a difference. And it doesn't always make a difference that you see immediately, that it takes time to change these big systems, which was, where we started the conversation, that it's there. Most of the folks that are tuning in probably are excited about compost,
Mm-hmm.
but there might be a neighbor who's not. And like my grandfather, the story I started with, needing to do essentially his own education in his neighborhood about it's not a pile of garbage in my backyard, it's creating new soil, and it's a resource, it's not waste.
Right.
But it takes time.
Totally. It really does. And the wheels of municipal government roll slowly, not only because of this need to get all the voices heard, but just things are done very thoughtfully and tried, and we try to do things in such a way that all the voices are heard and taken into account, and that we can slowly shift behavior and attitudes through what we're hearing from the community and for the guidance that we get from City Council, who are the elected officials that we ultimately work for through the community. So
yeah. And then to touch back on those systems changes and the complexity of it, we in Boulder County did have at first you could put all things that said compostable on it in there. It was just everything goes. And then a few years in, the company that does our composting, A1 Organics,
right.
said we can't handle the amount of contamination that's coming in. So we had to take a big step back. And I think, forgive me on my timeline here, but that was about 1.5 years ago that happened. Yeah. And it went from, is that about right timing that we?
Yeah, it started happening a little bit before that, but that was when I think the official announcement was made.
Yeah.
That we had to really cut back.
But the reality is it's already gotten better. So it's not fixed. People are still putting things in the compost in the Boulder County area that are not supposed to be in there. But with people's help, to that point that it really does make a difference what you do. We have already cleaned up the stream a lot and are making new and better compost that can be actually used instead of tossed, which was what was happening before.
Yeah, that's totally correct. It's very much better. I'm in pretty constant contact with our friends over at A1 Organics. A lot of them are involved in the Colorado Composting Council, and we talk all the time. And of course, my question for them always is, is it getting better? And it definitely is. They are seeing a major change. They're making a beautiful product out of the food scraps and yard trimmings that come out of Boulder and other municipalities. And they're not having the contamination issues that they were before due to this change. And it's a hard shift. It's another one of those kind of slow moving, got to steer the ship in a different direction all of a sudden, and it takes time and effort to do that. But it sounds like it's working, so we'll keep going and keep pushing. So
which is kind of beautiful because compost is a slow process too, but then also faster than you would imagine. If you have the chance to have a compost in your backyard, it is one of the most magical processes I've ever gotten to witness, to watch what a perceived waste become a resource, to become soil that can grow new things is incredible. And that's kind of where I want to slowly land our conversation is just in the absolute awe of these natural systems that support us that we don't even think about, and the flaw that we have created by making these more industrialized processes. And then how's that all kind of coming together with the industrialized municipal compost that we have? And can you speak to that? It's not a question, it's sort of an invitation to explore.
Yeah, I was thinking about that sort of thing in preparing for this conversation, and what I was saying earlier about composting not being new, I think is just a big piece of it, is that this is something that it's a natural process. It's so simple and easy. We just need to let nature do what she does and get out of the way. And all the industrialization and modernization of inconveniences that we have built for ourselves around humankind are all wonderful in some ways, but in other ways they get in the way of the natural processes that we just need to get out of the way of. And one fun fact that I was thinking about that I wanted to bring up today too is that I know, going back to the whole kind of geeking out on the soil microbes and microscopy, is that, believe it or not, these same types of microbes that are developed by the making of compost are in our own guts. And they're responsible for regulating much of human health as well as soil health. And there's more and more research being done on the connection of microbes in the human gut versus microbes in soil and in the environment. Humans are living organisms that rely on the microscopic life in our guts as much as the soil does to be healthy, and it's really all interconnected. So we need to not only get out of the way of nature to let nature do what it's always done better than humans can, but also realize that the same is true for our own internal biome and our internal health. So it's really I find it fascinating, that whole topic. So.
Really amazing. Do you also have on hand, and if you don't, it's okay, any statistics or like grounding assessments of, since the Boulder area started the municipal compost, how much that's cut back on waste?
I don't have them at my fingertips, but it is something that we track, and we're in the process, I know right now, of updating all of the data for the greenhouse gas inventory, which does have a bit of a waste component to it, and we do track the collections of all the different waste haulers that operate in Boulder to determine what diversion rates are and how that's changed. I know that overall diversion for Boulder right now is 54%, which is pretty good, and that's not just the organic stream though. That's all things diverted from landfill and put to more beneficial use. So I could certainly certainly look up some of that information more detailed and I do know that the city's updating not only its numbers right now, but there's a climate action story map that tells a little bit more specifically the story of all the different programs our department works on, which includes not only circular economy and waste and composting, but also energy and nature-based climate solutions that composting is obviously quite interconnected with as well.
Very, very cool. Sandy, what do you love about your job getting to work on compost? What do you love the most about it?
Just the fact that it's really grounded. I mean, literally and figuratively. I mean, compost is an ancient cycle of life that we lost somewhere along the way. And I love being able to try to teach people how just natural and easy and simple it is, and try to change people's minds about having to throw things, throw organic waste into the trash, and have to have a cellophane wrapped banana, and just to teach people that composting is natural, it's ancient, it's something that it's so easy, we just need to get out of the way and let it happen. And that's what I like to do the most, is just talk about composting as the complete solution to so many of our environmental challenges that there are. And I could geek out on all the facts around keeping organic materials out of landfills and reducing methane emission and creating value out of what people consider waste, putting life back into soil. Water retention is huge, which therefore helps to regenerate ecosystems. The cool thing about pulling carbon from the air and putting it back in the ground where it's actually needed by plants, instead of in the air where it actually causes global warming. And just creating healthier soil that can grow more nutritious food, and then how more nutritious food then can make for healthier people. And it's how interconnected that all is. So that's what's exciting about compost, is it's just, it is a natural cycle of life, and we need to roll with it, not against it.
For shows when we work with kids, I always have everybody go like this. So I'm going to do this to end. Well, actually, we do this and then I'm going to ask one more question. So take your hands and wind your fingers together and just say interconnectivity.
Interconnectivity.
Excellent. So
Awesome.
That's how I teach kids to think about how things are all connected together after we've had a show that explores similar.
That's lovely.
Thank you so much for being with us. I thought we would end with 3 tips for how to keep waste out of the landfill this Thanksgiving week. Do you want, and we're just going to make them up right now. I don't know what we're going to say. So number 1, you go first.
Oh, sure. So I'm a huge planner. I love meal planning. So that means not only planning to make meals, but also planning for what to do with the leftovers, and making sure you have enough reusable, durable containers to store leftovers. You have room in your freezer, you have room in your fridge. And the internet is amazing for searching for recipes that contain ingredients that are already in your fridge. I do that all the time. If I look and rather than let something rot and put in the compost, I'd rather make something out of it. So I always just search, what can I do with lentils, celery, and green peppers? And you can find all kinds of different recipes, and you can just use, that's my big secret, is just planning. Let's plan not to waste by using what you have and storing what you have properly too.
Oh, I love that. Excellent. Do you want to go number 2? Do you have a number 2 there? I can take one if you want.
I do, and this actually touches on some other things that are probably beyond the scope of this conversation, but I love the idea of using smaller plates at meals, because using smaller plates makes you take less food onto your plate that you may or may not eat if you get full. But you'll get full, you won't get full as fast if you have less food on your plate, and if you have a smaller plate, you'll have less food on your plate. So I think it's just a way to fool yourself.
Well, especially those of us with kids, I love the idea of a smaller plate and saying, you can fill it up, and then you can always get more.
Right.
If you need to at Thanksgiving or any meal, of course. And then, how about number 3? Do you have a third one?
I do have a couple more, but I want to hear yours too.
I I've been enjoying, mine are very simple. I like your bigger systems thinking. You keep going, Sandy.
Well, I think just the basic thing too of asking if you're going to have guests over and feed them a lot of food, tell them to bring their own containers for leftovers to bring them home. Or if you forget or don't do that, make sure you have plenty of containers that you can lend out to people and send them home with food. And then of course donation is always a huge thing too. And I know that a lot of pantries are hurting right now, and food pantries really need non-perishable food. So while it's not maybe as applicable to, actual cooked Thanksgiving meals, any leftover cans or non-perishable dry foods, things like that, even just go buy some, give it to a pantry. There's lots of folks that need it out there. So that's another way to make sure you're not wasting food, is by donating it.
I love that. That's excellent. My tips are around the same ideas, so I'm going to leave it there. The main one I think of is not overbuying in the first place, which I think connects to planning. I see
Totally.
much of just, it's that feeling of like, there's going to be so many people and we need so much. So kind of pulling back on that, and also remembering, like, you're not going to eat nearly as much as you think you're going to.
Right.
Once you have all that stuff from a Thanksgiving meal, if you're having a big Thanksgiving meal. So
slowing down is always a good one too. So let your brain realize you're full, because it takes a little while for the stomach, to tell your brain that you're full. So
right. And the connection there is that then that creates a lot of food waste when we take too much food and put it on a plate, because we don't usually put the food that's already been on our plate back into a dish or a Tupperware, especially if a lot of people. And if you have that extra stuff and you live in Boulder or Boulder County, you can compost anything that you need to, that really does need to go in the compost, as long as it is a food or a yard trimming.
Right. Food and plants only. We're fortunate to be able to do it in Boulder County, but we just need to make sure that we're doing it cleanly as well. So thanks for that reminder, Paige.
Okay, let's end the same way we started, and we'll just do, and anybody watching, you can join us. We're going to end with 3 deep breaths, and I'm going to just bring in a few words of awe and gratitude for our natural systems. So landing in the body, finding the breath, and just feeling a sense of gratitude and awe for the natural systems that are right outside our doors and under our feet right now, supporting us with food and water and compostable realities without us having to lift a finger. It's always there, this beautiful earth, this planet supporting us. And really, if we get out of the way and also show up to use these systems appropriately, we have everything we need. One moment at a time. One step at a time. Just slowly opening the eyes. And thank you so much for joining me, Sandy. It's so nice to see you.
Thanks so much for having me, Paige. Great chatting with you for sure.
Okay, we'll talk soon. Sandy works for the City of Boulder Climate Initiatives, and you can find out more about what the City of Boulder is up to with their climate initiatives and more on their website. Do you know that URL?
You can just search City of Boulder Department of Climate Initiatives. You should find it very easily. So.
Bye. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving, however you celebrate.
I don't know how to turn this off, actually.
Yeah.
We started the way we really started it, or ended the way we really started it, with me being like, I don't know how to work this. I'm going to push this X.
Okay. Bye. I'm going to push it too.